There are secrets out there, guys, performance marketing secrets, and knowing just one or two of them can absolutely light up your funnels. Let's go. This is the Revenue Driven CMO. I'm your host, Chris Mechanic. Join me as I uncover the secrets of the world's most elite CMOs and marketing leaders. The Revenue Driven CMO is sponsored by Web Mechanics, the AI-driven performance agency that makes you smarter. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Revenue Driven CMO. I'm your man, Chris Mechanic. I have a really interesting guest today, an amazing marketer and advisor to multiple companies like Asymmetric, Atomico. He's a coach, he's a mentor, and he currently is heading up marketing at Beamery, which is a 400-person organization, but he was employee number 6, literally. So, those types of stories don't happen unless there's something special under the scene. So I'm super duper excited to welcome to the show, Mr. Ben Slater. Welcome to the show, Ben.
Thanks, Chris. Excited for the conversation and excited to be here.
Yeah, likewise. And just from, your background and also having spoken with you on the pre-call, like I know that this is going to be an awesome one. So let's
Well, I'll
jump
do my
right in.
best.
Yeah,
Sounds good.
let's jump right in and let everybody know what is one of your best kept secrets to marketing success.
I love it. We're getting into the meaty questions straight away. I think for me, it's the true power of an integrated campaign strategy that tells a big story. But let me back up a bit first. So in marketing, it's so easy to fall into the trap of random acts of marketing, right? We all have so many different tactics at our disposal. We can run webinars, set up content syndication, launch a new social channel. And when you do this, the team is always busy, but you're always in reactive mode, right? You're always
Yeah,
scrambling to get the next asset live, and there isn't a clear message and structure, and process is the first thing that falls by the wayside. You can also fall into the trap of incrementalism, right? Doing more stuff, but finding it hard to materially move the needle or take a big jump forward.
yeah,
So, by contrast, for me, the secret is telling a big story, right? A unified and integrated campaign strategy with a single, consistent message across all channels. And look, it sounds simple, right? And in theory, it shouldn't be too much of a secret. But let me unpack a little bit more what I mean and kind of break down the process and the way that I think about it.
yeah,
So, for me, it all starts with a single clear message that is based on the business strategy, right? Not what you believe in marketing, but what your company wants to be known for in the market. So this is a
yeah,
big story, not a sort of tactical feature or benefit. And the question that you need to ask yourself as a leader, or with your leadership team in marketing, is what is the shift in the market? What's the existential threat to your customers? What is the thing that CEOs will sit up and take notice of? So
hmm,
once you have that, the next step for me is, building a really clear messaging framework. What is your right to tell the story? What is the unique differentiators that you have that will support in the minds of the customers? And then you can work through how you bring this story to life with different programs and assets. Do you have launches or product developments that can tie into it? How are you supporting different stages of the funnel? How are you moving people through? And do you have the whole marketing organization aligned around this message? Because it's no good, having this, spending all this time developing this story and then having different regions, off over here speaking about something completely different.
right.
And then obviously it needs to be aligned by kind of sales messaging and enablement. So when you're planning for it, and again, I think this is an area where we can often fall down. You initially need to instead of starting by marketing this externally, you need to market it internally, right? So
Hmm.
how do you build internal awareness, roadshow the campaign, get buy-in, get feedback? And then when you do take it to market, it's obviously not a once and done job. It requires commitment, consistency, and from what I've seen, we need to have something in market 6 to 12 months at the minimum, right, to really start to get that message across.
Hmm.
It tends to be the situation that when you're bored of your message, that's when it's starting to work, right?
Yeah,
um but
that's
but look, when this
interesting.
when this stuff works, right, it has pretty significant impacts in terms of awareness, in terms of building internal alignment and excitement around your company story, in terms of getting everyone on the team rowing in the right direction, in terms of pipeline, in terms of revenue. And look, you can still measure performance of individual assets, webinars, things you put live, and look, we do a Beamery, but ultimately you want to understand whether you know the campaign and the campaign strategy is moving the needle on the big stuff, right? Is it changing what people understand your company to be in the market? Is it altering brand sentiment? Is it creating more pipeline? We're always going to have urgent requests, things we need to accommodate. But I think, we all need to remember that the things you say yes to matter more than you realize. And if we're not
Yeah.
careful, we can end up running from, one urgent priority to the next, and we lose sight of that big story. So for me, the secret is start with the big story, right? Put your eggs into that basket and really make sure that it's aligned with the company strategy and that every other department is on board, that understands the message that you're going to market and can play back the messaging to you, and hopefully you'll be successful.
Yeah, that does make a lot of sense. And I think as marketers, all of us at some point have been guilty of random acts of marketing, right?
Of course,
And
of
like
course.
we ourselves, and we have many clients who basically just go white paper to white paper almost, and without lacking that big story. So I love the concept of starting with the big story. Another thing you said that jumped out at me that I love was start the campaign internally, like
Mm.
start by selling this big idea internally. And I imagine you would get a lot of feedback in that process to really fine tune it. But I think that's so important and goes such a long way toward alignment and sales enablement and messaging, because the worst is like when, like, if you were to get a lead that came in that was exposed to this big story idea, and then the sales team just like had no idea really what that messaging and that framework even was. But I'm curious, like it makes perfect sense, but it's also in some way hard to do. Like, what do you
Mm.
think are the barriers? Like, how come more marketers aren't starting with this big story and then being very coordinated and strategic? Like, why do you think we fall victim to random acts of marketing so frequently?
It's a really great question, and look, you're totally right. We all do. I think part of it is taking the time to, what's that Navy SEAL saying? Slow is smooth, smooth is fast, right? Part of it is taking the time to slow down and you know, do the hard work, and it is hard work, right? Of building out that campaign story. And, that's contingent on you having a really clear company story, right? If you're
Yeah.
trying to be all things to all people, it's actually quite challenging for marketing to tell, or put a message in market that is really clear and really consistent.
Hmm.
So that's where we start. And then I think it's also making sure that you have the internal alignment that this is where you're going to invest in over
Hmm.
the next, let's say 6 to 12 months. And that this is the reason why, there's a significant market shift in a certain direction, and to take advantage of it and position ourselves as a leader within the category, or to move the category in a new direction. We have to invest in putting this significant thought leadership message out into market, and build awareness and internal understanding as to what that means, because we forget that not everyone in the business understands the nuances of marketing, right? And
Right.
you know understands how these things come together. So I think it's starting with the big message, and then making sure that you have alignment as to what bringing that message to market actually means, right? And if you can do that hard upfront work, I think you give yourself really good runway to kind of commit to this direction. And you also give yourself an ability to push back on requests that might come in from different areas of the business.
Yeah.
Yes, this is important, but hey, we committed to this. Is it more important than this, right? And hopefully, if you've done that upfront alignment, and if the story that you committed to is the big story for the company, you should be able to navigate those requests internally. But look, it's not easy, right? And often you need to find a level of balance because there will be things that come up that you do need to get done, right? And that's just part of the blocking and tackling of being a marketer.
Well, it's certainly not easy, uh, but in a way it might. So there's a lot of upfront work, like a lot
Mm,
of just thought and strategy that goes into upfront. But if this is a longer term campaign, like if it's going to be
mm.
running for 6 to 12 months, that's almost, I mean, it sounds almost easier than, running around scrambling, like trying to put out campaign after campaign. You know what I mean? So I'm curious, like, so for the 6 to 12 months that this is in market, like, what are you doing during that time? Is it a matter of mostly like monitoring and analyzing, or are you like slowly scaling spend up, or like what do you do during that 6 to 12 month period when it's in market?
Yeah, it's a great question. And what we'll have is we'll have programs that are tied to the overarching campaign message, the overarching story, going live every week, every month, right?
Hmm.
So there's always stuff happening, right? There's always, new assets coming to market, webinars, events, but everything is tied to that overarching story. So we
Yeah.
we can be consistent, right? And we can educate the market in the direction that we want. So yeah, it's certainly not, we launch one thing and we just kind of sit in the dashboard and look at the data. I think activity is important, and you want to, particularly if you're selling to a smaller audience like we are, so we sell directly to enterprise. You need to keep what you're putting in market fresh, but it needs to be consistent with the story.
Yeah. So probably for a lot of people listening, they're like, hey, this makes sense, but they want an example.
Mm.
I want to learn more about Beamery. I want you to tell me, kind of what Beamery is about, but I'm dying to hear, and I can tell that you have one. Like I can tell you have a really powerful win story probably from a campaign like this, which was thoughtful and based around a big story, and then, had other activities and other assets to support it. Could you tell us a big win story?
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, yeah, maybe I'll talk about a campaign that just wrapped at the end of August. We have a new one in market that we've just launched, which is kind of focused on a new business direction
Yeah, and
or
it
a
would
new
probably be
business
helpful
opportunity.
also, just to give a little bit of context around Beamery for anybody that's not seen it. I know.
Abs Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. So yeah, maybe I'll start with that. So Beamery is a an AI platform that helps large organizations manage the entire talent lifecycle in one place. So what we mean by that is, they manage everything from attracting the right talent to hiring, potential high performers to managing the kind of upskilling and talent development process as well. So
Mm,
it's really a kind of single control center to make sure you're able to build your workforce of the future. And we sell to, yeah, 4,500 style businesses.
mm,
Um, so, for us, what's been fascinating to track is the total explosion the of the world of work tech, right? I think we can trace this kind of acceleration of change back to COVID, right? Where you saw businesses start to work in different ways, where you saw huge strain on the talent market, right?
yeah.
Based on things like remote hiring. And you saw an acceleration of digital transformation that put a big crunch in terms of what skills were available and what skills were needed for organizations. And although we've come out of the pandemic and we've seen things like remote work maybe dialed down in terms of importance, every business is still on a skill transformation journey, right?
Hmm.
And every business needs to be able to be more agile and make decisions about their workforce in a way that leverages the data around who they have today and who they're going to need in the future. Most
Hmm.
businesses, this is just because the software and the technology doesn't really exist. But most businesses don't have a really clear view of the skills they have today in their workforce and the skills they're going to need in the future, right?
Yeah.
So over the past year, what we've run is a campaign that educates the market around the importance of talent agility and talent resilience, right?
Mm-hmm.
So being able to deploy skills in your business into the areas where they're needed most, to be able to, instead of just going out to the market when you have a job, um, instead looking internally to see whether there are opportunities for you to upskill and obviously increase efficiency and save cost by doing that, and increase
Mm-hmm.
employee engagement as well. And what what a business needs to do to adopt those types of techniques. How does it need to change, and how can that ultimately create an organization that is more resilient to
Yeah.
potential changes in the market? And obviously, a lot of this story was very aligned with the changing economic scenario that we were headed into towards the end of last year.
Yeah.
So look, for us, it was really helpful because we were able to take our proposition, right, which is one tied to the HR part of the business, and elevate it to speak to a broader business value, right, that Beamery was
Mm-hmm.
providing. We were
Yeah.
helping businesses, adapt, whether that was you know, them needing to go through certain restructuring, or whether that was them needing to dramatically increase productivity or efficiency. We were showing them ways that they might be able to do that from a thought leadership standpoint, and obviously
Mm-hmm.
building our reputation as a player that supported that, not just helped them get the right person in the right role. For us, it was very impactful, and obviously if we looked at the numbers in terms of delivery of pipeline and everything like that. That all came out ahead of plan, which again is exactly what you want to see here. And I'm lucky to have a great marketing programs group led by Joey Lai, who leads it at Beamery. She's fantastic.
That's awesome. Yeah, and I'm on the site right now. I mean, you guys are working with some major companies: VMware, Workday, Appian, Accenture, AstraZeneca. I'm just on your demo request page. But that's amazing. I mean, those are some serious companies.
Yeah, look, we're lucky to have some pretty fantastic clients. I think for us, what's always been most important, and I would certainly advise anyone listening in to kind of bear this in mind as well, is that we position ourselves first and foremost as a talent transformation partner to the people we're trying to sell to, right? Versus
Hmm.
just purely a software vendor.
Right.
Because any company that's considering a technology purchase is looking to go on some form of transformation journey, right? And ultimately, what's important is that you're able to help them take the next steps on that journey, some of which will be based on in the implementation of your software. Some will literally just be based on changes in process that they need to make. But if you can be an advisor um, to them and help them, make those changes versus just, someone who is, pushing a product. I think that's an enormously valuable thing that you can do. And obviously, it all starts with marketing and thought leadership.
Yeah. No, absolutely, man. I mean, you guys clearly there's something, some part of the equation at Beamery that's going right. I mean, like between the growth trajectory, the client, or the client book. So that's amazing. It's very impressive. Congrats to you and to your team.
Yeah, well, look, it's been a fun ride so far, and I think with all of the change in the space, as I said, this is talent is something that might have been kind of top of the CEO agenda. If you look at the kind of annual McKinsey surveys for the past 10, 20 years, now it really is the top boardroom conversation, right? And if you look at the reporting, it's how do we change the skills our workforce has, so that we're able to deliver on business objectives. So this really is the number one agenda item for large organizations.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, especially like between the pandemic, everybody going remote, there's a whole set of skills and tech that people need. But now we've got AI hitting the scene as well, right? And, probably people like some people that need to use AI right now, but that number is going to continue growing. Like right now, it's kind of optional. Like I feel like it's, mostly the earlier adopters that are into AI. But let's seg over to some of the challenges. Like I'm sure it's not all wine and roses. Like what are some of the things that you're struggling with right now, or what's keeping you up at night?
Yeah, look, it's a great question. I think one of one of the big things that I'm spending a lot of time thinking about at the moment is um, how we best take advantage at Beamery of an opportunity to adapt our story and our value proposition to solve a far broader set of business challenges than maybe we were doing 6 to 12 months ago. So
Yeah.
I think, as I mentioned a couple of times now, the world of work, which is the space that we operate in, is changing. And the number one item on the agenda of CHROs, CFOs, CEOs when it pertains to this area is skill transformation. Now, this is a slightly newer story for Beamery. It's always something that we've supported organizations with, but it hasn't been what we've led with, right? So
Hmm.
for us, the challenge for marketing is how we bring a new story to market, right? A bigger story to market, but also how we make the right people aware of it. And
Hmm.
that's an internal challenge and also an external challenge, right? Because it starts with upskilling and enabling internal teams, doing it fast, right? So that we can take advantage of a significant opportunity, rebuilding materials, updating the website, new demo environments, and a lot of this stuff we've done, and some of it is in progress at the moment. And then there's also an external challenge, right? Which is how do you make sure that every business that we want to sell to, understands and perceives our new value proposition.
Hmm.
Um, and that obviously doesn't happen overnight. It's a sustained effort from kind of the whole go-to-market function, and the ways that we interact with influencers of the market like analysts. And it's something that we're seeing some good leading indicators in terms of success around. But we have a long way to go, right? As does any business when they look to significantly enlarge the kind of value proposition that they have. So that's I think the big thing keeping me up at night, just because there's so many different related components of that,
Yeah,
and so many moving pieces across the organization.
that makes sense. So give us an example of skill transformation. So that's, I guess, is another way to say that sort of cross training or upskilling.
Yeah, so that would for sure be an example. I mean, the simplest example might be, you're speaking to an organization, and I'm going to make this up, but let's say it's a car manufacturer, right?
Hmm.
And they want to bring out an electric car. And to do that, they need very different skills in their organization than they
Right.
have today to be successful, right?
Got it.
So what does that look like? And obviously there are different ways that they can achieve that. It might be acquiring a new company, it might be upskilling and developing their current talent. It might be hiring new talent with specific skills. Um, but the issues that businesses run into is that they actually don't necessarily know where to start because they don't know the skills they have internally. They don't know what they need.
Hmm.
And then, even if they had that data, they don't necessarily have a single holistic system to go out and kind of do it all in one place. So that I think is kind of in a nutshell the type of challenges that we will be working on with customers.
No, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense. So it sounds like the companies, like the size of the companies, the industry of the companies that you're
Mm.
selling to is going to remain the same, right? Like it's not like you're going down market with a new offer, but it's maybe the individual buyers, like the personas or the buying influences might be different when like you're talking talent acquisition versus when you're talking skill transformation. Is that
That's exactly right. That's a really good way of putting it. And where we see the opportunity, and again, this kind of comes back to what we said earlier on about the opportunity for marketers to tell a big story,
yeah,
right? A big story around kind of business change is, if you think about a classic enterprise organization, they have incredibly effective instrumentalization around, financial data, around supply chain. But where do they spend 70%, right, on average of their budget? It's headcount, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at how decisions are made in that sphere, it tends to be a lot of them tend to be subjective, right? And they tend to be
Hmm.
on, gut feel. If you were able to bring the same level of orchestration to talent, right? And still obviously enable and empower humans, right, within that process, because it is a fundamentally human area. What
Yeah.
what could we look like, right? And I think that's the kind of big opportunity and exciting next step for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Hey, this just popped into my mind, but are you familiar with Winter? Winter.
I'm not, no.
You might like it actually. So what it is it's a platform whereby you can test messaging. So like, as you're putting your big story idea together, like
Mm,
you might have like a couple different variations of it. And you can go to Winter, and we'll include a link in the show notes, but it's just Winter. And what you do, like it's all B2B audiences. You go and, select like company industry, company size, job titles, things like that, very much like LinkedIn targeting.
mm.
And then you can put your message in front of 50 or 100 people and actually have them, write written responses like, hey, I like this part, I didn't like that part, etc. But it
That's
could
awesome.
be it could be useful in like in selling to a new persona, just to, before you really put a lot of money behind something in the market, just to kind of test it a little bit.
I love that. That's great. I'll for sure look that up.
Cool. Well, on that note, so it sounds like there's another uh big campaign story coming
Mm.
to a theater near us. What else are you guys investing in, or what are some of your big priorities for the rest of this year, or maybe Q1 next year?
Yeah, so obviously we are really getting into the meat of event season currently. Trade shows, corporate events, sponsorships. So there's a ton of blocking and tackling here
Yeah.
over the next month or so. Where I guess really it kind of extends into kind of the end of November.
Mm,
We talked a little bit about kind of new integrated campaigns where we see, I think, a lot of opportunity to move the needle over the coming months is around continuing to enhance and up level what we do on the ABM side.
mm,
So, we have ABM teams in North America and in EMEA. So I have leaders, Kartik and Christy, that run those.
hmm.
And we see great return on investment from what we do here, both in terms of kind of regional events, but also in terms of you know personalized online programming, close alignment and work with the sales organization. So, we're looking at the data, this performs very well, from an ROI standpoint against a lot of other channels.
Hmm.
So, for us, we're looking at how do we go deeper here? How do we, get more aligned with sales around our kind of tier one accounts, right?
Yeah.
How do we build more personalized experiences? How do we get everything, more connected, more joined up from a reporting standpoint? And to kind of go through the levels of maturity, I think in any go-to-market process, it does require a ton of thought and most importantly, a ton of alignment. So
Yeah.
that's an area that we're doing a lot of work around at the moment and one that I'm personally really excited about.
That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, ABM, I think it's one of those things where it's like a buzzword now, but really I think ABM has existed for decades. It's really just like good targeted sales and marketing at the end of the day. Do you guys have any tech that you use? Like, are you using Sixth Sense or anything like that?
So we use Sixth Sense.
Oh, you do?
We also use Uberflip, which is a helpful kind of content experience tool. And by combining, the two of those alongside other technology like Drift on the website, we can create kind of personalized surround experiences for accounts that we care about. Um, and weave together a digital experience across the channels that we use and across what they see that feels as personal as possible, which is obviously super helpful.
Yeah, what do you think about Sixth Sense? Do you think it's all it's cracked up to be? I've heard mixed reviews.
Well, look, I think firstly, what I would say with ABM is it's something that you're not going to solve with a tool. I think a tool can help, but the main priority is getting strong process, getting the right leaders in place, and having really clear alignment with, your partners in the sales organization as to who the targets are, right? Who are the accounts that we actually care about? So for us, our ABM teams are aligned to the most strategic accounts of Beamery. And where Sixth Sense comes in and where Sixth Sense is valuable is tracking the overarching engagement of those accounts and pulling in signals that we might not see ourselves, right? Like,
Yeah,
are those accounts researching competitor websites? Are those accounts coming to our website and not filling in forms? Is it sort of, what's happening in the dark funnel, right? Which is the term that Sixth Sense certainly evangelize. I
hmm,
think so that part works well. I think if we were an organization that sold to, any business on the planet, there are components of Sixth Sense functionality that would work far better for us. So, it will highlight, accounts that maybe aren't in your system that could be interested in your solution. Now, for us, that's not a priority because, we're selling to, the Fortune 500, right, or the Global 2000, and we know who those accounts are, right?
yeah,
So we're probably not going to learn anything new. It's probably, I would hope there isn't a sort of 50,000 person company that we've just missed, right?
right.
So that's less valuable. But we're still on our journey when it comes to the maturity with ABM technology. And we still have lots to learn. And I think what's been great about the team at Sixth Sense is that they're very willing to partner to show us how they use the tool, and they've been really helpful in terms of helping us think through our methodologies, right? Which is what I'm always looking for in a vendor.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. Cool. Well, you have inspired me here today to get out of the rat race of, just random acts of marketing and to come up with a big story for our own org and also for our clients. And I think you've inspired a lot of the listeners as well. I mean, it's just so easy to get mixed up in that day to day. But you've demonstrated here the power of what was that Navy SEAL saying? Slow is smooth
Uh,
and smooth is fast.
that's the one. Yeah, that's the one. I think it's
I
Navy
love that.
SEALs. I hope it's not apocryphal. I hope I've not annoyed someone with that by getting that wrong.
No, I love that though. Well, thank you very much, Ben. This has been awesome. You're very, very impressive, and I'm impressed with Beamery. And they're lucky to have you, man. And your story is awesome, like the way that you were employee number six, and now it's up to 400. So that's super duper cool. Are you ready for the lightning round?
Um, so ready.
All right, let's do it. So, question one: if you were to start a side hustle, what side
Hmm.
hustle would that be?
Yeah, I had to think about this the other day. I'm pretty fascinated by the kind of health, fitness, general kind of human optimization space. I think
Hmm.
it's likely to be something in here, in kind of that general space. And you know, maybe in kind of supplementation, one of the companies that I've admired is a company called Pure Sport that make really high quality supplements, using things like, lion's mane or different mushrooms with, nootropic uh, you know, capabilities, and using really high quality CBD. I think there's a lot to explore here,
Yeah,
and I think it's going to be a big space in the future.
cool. Very cool. Question number two: top three books or authors or influencers that have made an impact in your career.
I'm going to go a little broader here and try and give you three that have changed the way that I think about my life and my career, I guess, within that. So the first, and this is a beast in terms of kind of a time commitment for anyone who wants to read this, is
Yeah.
there's an author called Robert Caro who's written a phenomenal four-part, soon to be five-part historical biography of Lyndon Johnson. I think
Wow.
it's called The Path to Power, years of Lyndon Johnson. And it's an amazing, in-depth account of his life. And, I didn't know an enormous amount about him going into it, but it's deeply fascinating to see, what he was prepared to do to obtain power, right, and to build power. And I think
Hmm.
there's some really interesting kind of examples in there. And I just think it's a fantastic book and or set of books. I would really recommend it either to
Interesting.
listen to on Audible or to read. There's a book called Not Fade Away: A Short White Life Well Lived, by Peter Barton, which again I love and I've read a couple of times. He was a high flying executive, central figure in the boom time of cable television, and was diagnosed with cancer at an early age. And it's a really personal account of his own confrontation with mortality.
Mm.
And we're all, I think so easy for us to get wrapped up into the day to day of our our life at work and company building and that pace of life. I think stepping back and thinking hard about these things, thinking about mortality is important. And the
Hmm.
third is a book that I actually finished last week called Outlive by Peter Attia, which is a fascinating book about longevity and the ability that we all have to impact that, through things like, exercise, nutrition. And he has an interesting podcast called the Drive podcast as well, which I would recommend.
That's awesome. Cool. Well, those were good. Those were good picks right there. And I was not expecting that. There were, most people say like marketing books or psychology of influence kind of stuff, but that was deep. I liked it. Um, Question number three is how do you avoid burnout and how do you help your
Mm,
team to avoid burnout?
mm. I think as a leader, as an executive, no one is looking out for your well-being apart from you, right? So it is actually a very important kind of personal focus. And your team or the company is relying on you to be able to make the right decision at the right time. And there's in the kind of hand-to-hand combat of working at a startup or a scale-up, there's certainly times where I felt at or close to burnout. I think for me, what I found very helpful is kind of a committed exercise practice. I've kind of meditated off and on, right? So I'm on a good streak currently. And
Nice.
uh, and for me, reading when I can is again very very kind of therapeutic, spending time in nature again. I mean, look, these are things we all know the answers to, right? But I think for me, it's committing to them, creating time and space for them,
Yeah.
scheduling them in your calendar, right? If needed, that's really important because, as I said, no one's gonna look out for this apart from you.
Yeah, that's true, man. Well, Ben, this has been really a lot of fun. I've enjoyed it quite a bit. I'd love to have you back on at some point. I learned a lot. I was inspired, and I'm gonna go come up with a big story idea. For the listeners out there, if you learned anything here today, or if you laughed a little bit, share this with a friend. Drop us a like or a 5-star review. We definitely appreciate that. Uh, Ben, for folks that want to learn more about you or Beamery, where would you direct them?
Yeah, so if you want to learn more about Beamery, our website, www.beamery.com, is the easiest place to find out. If you want to connect or kind of ask me any questions or ask about any of those books that I mentioned, you can find me on LinkedIn, just Ben Slater, and happy to connect and chat more.
Cool. Yeah, and we'll include all those books in the show notes as well as some other links that were mentioned here today. Ben, you stay on the line for just a minute, but for everybody else, that's been another exciting episode of Revenue Driven CMO, and we will see you next time.
Thanks, folks.
And that's a wrap. Thanks for joining us here today. For show notes and other episodes, visit us at revenuedrivencmo.com. That's revenuedrivencmo.com. And hey, exclusive for listeners of this podcast, Web Mechanics will do 10 to 20 hours of work for you for free. Literally, no sales calls, no BS. Just give them a problem and they will put a team to work for you for free for 10 to 20 hours. even if you're already a client. If you're struggling with demand gen, lead gen, SEO, SEM, Google ads, LinkedIn ads, conversion optimization, if you can't get Facebook or Meta ads to work for the life of you, or you can't figure out attribution, Web Mechanics will take a good hard look at whatever problem you give them, whatever programs you put in front of them, and they will give you an objective, informed opinion, plus some advice from 10 to 20 hours of senior level attention. And that's just because you're a listener of this podcast. So I would suggest take them up on this offer. It's ridiculous. Go to revenuedrivencmo.com/free, fill out the 2-minute form, and you will not regret it. Literally zero downside, unlimited potential for growth. So do yourself a favor, revenuedrivencmo.com/free, no hyphens, no punctuations. You will be happy about that decision.